Well, what is going on, you sweet little squid? Thank you for joining me for another episode of, I guess, Weekends with Yam and just sit down chat with Yam. There's some fun videos I've been doing lately, asking people questions on Instagram, seeing what they're up to, and getting into it. So title of today's video is Beginner Rider Questions Answered from an Experienced Rider. And just so you guys think I'm not talking out of my ass over here, I am a pretty experienced rider. I've been riding for about 6 years. I've probably ridden over 300 motorcycles at this point. I've probably done 100 days at the track. I currently have a competition race license with that machine over there. I ride off-road with this machine right here, do some motocross, do some trail riding. I currently adventure scramble this little beast over here with this Ducati. These are 3 of my personal motorcycles. I've got 7 or 8 more over there in the garage that I'm giving away for free. I'm all about bikes. I've got a pretty good amount of experience and I feel pretty confident in talking to beginners about their journeys and their questions. So what I did was I went on my Instagram, asked them to ask me some questions, and now I'm gonna go on a first come, first served basis and try to answer them. So let's get started. The first thing I want to discuss here is that there are so many questions here. There's so many. There's no way I can answer all of them. So I'm just going to go through from the first ones that came in, find some good ones, and try to answer them. So let's go. All right. Andrei Shepelovich was the first question. He asked, getting over fear of the road/traffic. So this is a big one for beginners. When you start riding, it feels like mingling with the cars and, you know, doing all that stuff, maybe passing some people on the highway can be pretty sketchy, can feel pretty frightening, I would say. The best thing I can say is that over time you will acclimate and things will get better. It's not gonna happen overnight. I remember for a long time I used to hate semi-trucks passing me on the freeway. I really didn't like it very much. I thought it was really kind of scary for maybe like the first 3 months that I rode. But over time, it just becomes normal, but that normal feeling can turn to complacency, which can be just as dangerous when you're not respecting the road and the traffic and the conditions around you. So it just takes time. You'll acclimate to it slowly, but you'll get over it. LS Chaff asks, is the Grom a good beginner bike for shorter riders? We did a whole video about why the Grom is not a great beginner bike. You should go and check that out for more information, but I think that the Grom is actually a bad beginner motorcycle. There are better options that are just as low of a seat height that you can have fun with. So Ben Onikilef, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, says, I'm having a real hard time getting confident going faster than like 40 miles per hour. So again, this goes back to just acclimation and getting used to something. I would say find a nice, 50 mile per hour road and just go up to about 40, stay 40, go up to 45, just get comfortable with going at that speed consistently, and then you should have that fear and that lack of confidence go down over time, and then kind of work your way up to higher and higher speeds, but you'll get there. It's not too scary. Bramwell Jack asks, how much horsepower do I need? Well, when you think about needing horsepower, you could get by with 8, right? You could have the Grom and be fine, but I would say for a beginner rider, anything from about 30 to 50 horsepower is gonna feel just fine and plenty fast, and you're gonna learn everything you need to learn. If you are a more mature motorcyclist, an older person, let's say, you could jump into the 700 or the 650 class, get something like the MT-07 or the Ninja 650. It's got about 75 horsepower, SB 650, that sort of thing. But I would really stay under that mark for your first bike. It's just a good rule of thumb. CB Liam asks, how to ride fast in 6GAR? That is a track-related question, and basically, it's just more this, less this. That's it. It's that simple. Ban Yans asks, how do you lean in a curve on windy roads? How to practice? So I think if you're like, from 0 months to 6 months learning how to ride, you don't really need to focus on body position just yet. And honestly, I tell a lot of beginner track day guys that they don't really need to focus on body position just yet. And they don't like it when I say that because everyone wants to look cool for the camera. Everyone wants to hang off the bike and lean and do that whole thing. But if you just mean a normal lean, literally all you're gonna do is, as you approach that corner, just push the bar in the direction you wanna go, and that motorcycle is gonna just gently fall over and carve the path you're asking it to go down. And once you're in that lean, you don't need to keep pushing, you just push a little bit and it's set right there and it carves that perfect lean all through the corner. Motorcycles want to lean. That is how they go through corners, and the gyroscopic forces will keep you upright. So don't worry about falling over. It takes a lot of input and bad rider inputs for a bike to just fall over as you lean it. It's pretty unlikely that you'll ask too much out of your tires as a beginner rider, so just gently push and lean on that bar, just push it through that corner, it'll go right through. It'll take a little bit of time to get used to, but you'll get there. Nicholas Dark 101 asks, why did Husqvarna lower the price of the Svartpillen 401? Is it now better than the Duke 390? So we literally just filmed a Svartpillen 401 video today that's going to be coming out next week by the time this video comes out. And I gotta say, the Svartpillen 401 is my go-to choice for beginner riders. It is such a fantastic motorcycle for the price point and the features you get. The thing costs $5,000 on the showroom floor. It's got fully adjustable suspension, knobby wheels and tires. Well, I guess the wheels aren't knobby. You know what I mean. Wire wheels, knobby tires. It's crazy the features that you get at that price point for the Husqvarna. So honestly, it's a fantastic bike. And I do think that it edges out the Duke 390 unless you really want a super on-road focused machine, but the Husky can actually play a little bit off-road, as we'll show you next week in our video. So the Husky's a great bike, and I kind of think it's better than the Duke 390, honestly. Leon Damjanov asks, why does the bike feel so heavy when turning on low speeds? Ah, you're figuring it out. So in low speed situation, the bike feels a little bit heavier because you don't have gyroscopic forces helping you to push around that motorcycle. When you increase the speed on a bike, the wheels start turning, everything lightens up and gets a little bit easier. I don't know the exact physical reason for it. I'm not a physicist myself, but I do know that it's related to the gyroscopic forces of the bike going down the road. It's why, when you're moving your bike around a shop or around your garage, as you tug on the bars and move around, it feels super heavy, right? But then once you get it moving, it's super easy to flick it over from side to side, and that's due to those gyroscopic forces. So Trevin asks how to apply brakes smoothly. So this is a common one. Brakes is something that honestly a lot of more experienced motorcyclists don't fully grasp how much they can brake or how gently or how aggressively they can activate their brakes, because it's something they don't have to practice super often. On the street, you're not going to be threshold braking, you're not going to be trail braking, you're not going to be understanding how aggressive you can be with that lever. So really how you brake really smoothly is just to, ever so gently just apply a preload amount of pressure to weight transfer to the front, and then you activate your pressure. So you don't want to stab the brakes, because that's how bad things happen. Never ever just yank on the front brakes on your motorcycle. You always want to preload, let the weight transfer forward, and then apply the pressure. It's going to be a lot smoother to do it that way than it would be to just jab on the brakes. So I would say go out to a parking lot, practice first, second gear, just come into a complete stop in as short of a distance as you can by smoothly slowing down. Don't stab the brakes, but set yourself some cones or markers and just practice coming to a stop. Just pull on the clutch and just come to a stop. Just practice using just your brake. Don't worry about downshifting just yet, even though engine braking will help you slow the motorcycle more down. Just practice that smooth braking, should be good. HC Trib asks, is dropping your bike something fair to expect when you're a beginner, almost unavoidable? I would say yes. I cannot think of a single rider who hasn't dropped a bike at some point. I literally dropped a bike today. We were out filming on the Svartpillen 401, and I was just trying to position it in a certain way, and I let it go too far over to my other side instead of the side that was towards my body, and I just kind of just gently set it down. I drop bikes all the time, and especially if you get involved in competition environments, if you get involved in off-road riding especially, you're gonna be dropping your bike all the time. But as a beginner rider on the street, you can certainly expect 1 or 2 low-speed spills in a parking lot, in a garage, or something like that. It happens to the best of us. I dropped my first motorcycle. I never dropped my second motorcycle, but I did crash it in a pretty spectacular way. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think it's pretty expected to be dropping your first motorcycle as a beginner rider. No big deal. Lakia Granger asks, gears are confusing, and I panic when I have to downshift, but not actually stop. So this is an interesting one, and I think it comes from people maybe not having a manual transmission background when approaching a motorcycle, but you have to always be aware of your speed and your rev range. Whenever you're riding your motorcycle, you need to be understanding what the revs are doing and what your speed is. That way you kind of intuitively know what the RPMs should be and what gear you should be in. The best thing you can do is when you're out riding, let's say your first gear, you're rolling the throttle, second gear, you're back on the throttle, just rolling. For motorcycles, you don't have to worry about being in the highest gear possible like you would a passenger car or something like that. When you're driving a car, you don't want to be hanging revs like crazy, but bikes love to rev. So if you're not super comfortable downshifting just yet, just hold revs a little bit higher. That way you can slow down and still be in the power band when you get back on the throttle. There's no real big downside to just keeping your bikes a little bit higher up in the revs. Bikes like to rev. You're not going to hurt them by any means by just keeping them a little bit higher in the rev range. You're not adding more wear and tear. They are designed to do that. So while you're still figuring out how to downshift correctly and appropriately, which is a skill it sounds like you should be working on, I would say just do that for now in the interim, and then I would say go to a parking lot and practice those smooth downshifts. I actually made a whole video discussing how to downshift and blip really smoothly that you can check out. I think I named it How to Rev Match on a Motorcycle, and it's just this smooth little blip motion that allows you to go down one gear, any gear you want. It's pretty awesome, and it feels really good to do. So go and practice that. Marcus Vent 13 says, I've been losing my rear tire traction ever so slightly on my downshifts lately. Suggestions? So that to me sounds like two things. Number one, it sounds like your bike doesn't have a slipper clutch. A slipper clutch allows you to downshift a little more aggressively, and it actually takes the impact of the transmission changing over gears. So you probably don't have a slipper clutch on your machine. And number two, you're probably not rev matching high enough to match the new RPM that your new gear that you selected down requires. So when you don't correctly rev match all the way to the top of where the new gear wants to be, what happens is the rear wheel is going to take all that power you just asked for it and have to adjust based on the transmission. So you have this gap between what the gear wants to be in the RPM and what your current RPM actually is. And so to close that gap, your rear wheel will actually take it. And so you'll have this sudden change in wheel speed to try to match up to where you are. So I would recommend, if you have to, over blip the throttle when you downshift, because even if you over rev a little bit, it's better than under revving, because if you under rev when you downshift, you're gonna be losing traction at the rear. So make sure that when you're coming to a downshift, just blip it really nice and hard. Blip it a little bit higher if you have to. That way you cover that range that you're supposed to be in. And that way you don't have this rear wheel traction issue, which is something that's super common. And I see it all the time on track too, where guys come into a corner and just bang down shifts and don't really understand that they have to also blip a little bit unless they have a slipper clutch, and then their rear end gets all out of sorts and they don't understand why their bike feels all wiggly under braking, but that's usually why. So go and practice that. Brody Merc X asks opinion about riding with sneakers. I do it sometimes on shorter rides. I cannot recommend highly enough for you to not wear sneakers when you ride. Your lower leg right over here is the first point of contact with the ground if you go down. Ankle snaps are no fun and can very easily happen, even under super low speed conditions on a motorcycle. These things weigh, between 350 to 500 pounds depending on the bikes you have. And that kind of weight falling on your leg is no fun. Even a peg can stab into your calf if you're not careful coming off your bike. So I would recommend definitely get yourself a full set of boots that go up to the halfway point on your calf. Something like the Alpine Stars SMXs, which is something that I wear for the street, work great. They provide you good coverage and protection. Do not wear sneakers when you ride. Please, I'm asking you, please don't do that. Call Me Gabez asks, at what point are you not a beginner rider? Based on years or miles? I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, because what happens is you have a lot of guys and girls who may be riding for 5-10 years, but I have to wonder what the quality of that riding was. So for example, someone who does not take riding seriously and doesn't treat it as a craft, doesn't actually try to get better at what they're doing, I don't really care if you've been riding for 5 years and commuting to work every day, because that just means that you know how to ride your motorcycle to work safely without killing yourself. It doesn't mean that you know how to ride a motorcycle in a bunch of different capacities and situations. I'll give you a perfect example. Last year, around this time, I picked up this motorcycle, the Desert Sled, and I had basically zero off-roading experience. I was extremely green to riding a motorcycle in low grip environments like gravel, sand, mud, and dirt, and that kind of stuff. And I realized there was a huge gap in my skill set, so I slowly started picking up those skills, trying to figure it out, doing it slowly. It led to me getting this dirt bike over here as well. So I would say it's difficult to qualify yourself as a non-beginner rider, because I think you should always retain a beginner's mindset, and that allows you to continue growing and becoming more experienced. That's kind of the thing. I think only you at some point can tell yourself, I don't think I'm a beginner anymore. Like, I think for me, I'm definitely not a beginner rider anymore, but am I super experienced? Maybe not. Am I experienced enough? Yes. I don't know, it's all kind of confusing, but I say retain that beginner's mind and try to learn as much as you can. Arvid asks, I feel uncomfortable braking with the front brake without ABS. Please help almighty Yam. What I would recommend is go out to a parking lot. I feel like I've been telling you guys go out to parking lots a lot, but it does help. Go out to a parking lot and try to brake as hard as you can until you feel that wheel lock up. So, you know, unless you are mid-lean, you're not gonna just completely wipe out if your front wheel locks up a little bit. It's gonna feel a little bit funny, right? You're gonna feel that sliding and that juddering. I guess you won't feel juddering because your bike doesn't have ABS, but I really recommend you try to brake as hard as you can and understand where it's gonna start slipping. That way, when you're out on the road and you realize that, holy crap, I'm never gonna really slide this thing out. It takes a lot of brake pressure to actually lock up a front wheel, a lot more than you might realize. So I'd encourage you to go out and try to find that limit and then know in the back of your mind where that limit is when you do go to brake. Benjamin Honeyborn asks, what in your opinion is the best beginner motorcycle? Right now, it's this Farpillen 401. I think that's the best value for money, the best setup. You can go on-road, off-road. It's a fantastic motorcycle. I recommend it to everyone. Abel Darn Gone asks, when we're riding at say 50 to 60, is it all right to hold the clutch and brake? I assume you mean kind of hovering your hands over the levers in case something happens. And that is okay. I've seen some, it's not my personal riding style, but I have seen some people ride with the brakes covered at all times, just making sure that they're ready to engage. That's never been my style and I don't ride that way, but I know that a lot of people recommend it that way. As long as you aren't dragging your front brake or dragging your clutch while you're riding, as long as you're fully depressed off those levers, I think you should be fine. Angel Velasquez 59 asks, should I stick by myself or look for a group to ride with? I only have had my bike for a month. I would say keep practicing by yourself. Group riding can introduce some really nasty social dynamics that cause you to start outriding what you know you should be doing and start putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. Happens all the time. I literally see it here in Austin probably every weekend at one of our famous roads, Lime Creek Road. Literally happens every weekend. Some group ride happens, some beginners are on it that shouldn't be on it, and then they outride themselves and crash. I would say ride by yourself and ride your own ride for the first 3 to 6 months, and then carry that ride your own ride mentality when you go ride with the group. If people in front of you are speeding and going fast, don't feel like you need to keep up, because remember, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you come back home safely and soundly to your family or your loved ones or your dog, whoever is waiting for you at home, because there is no trophy at the end of a group ride. There's no lap records at your local streets. So have fun and be safe. There's no need to keep up with your buddies if you're not feeling comfortable doing so. So I would say wait a little bit longer. That would be my personal opinion. And then go have some fun and always ride your own ride. Zetaverse asks, how can I work on improving my abilities? What should I avoid doing? Thanks, Papa Yam. Well, thank you, Zetaverse, for asking a question. I think the principle that I follow for my own riding is active practice and perfect practice. So for road stuff, I think I don't really think that much about it anymore because it all feels super easy and kind of autopilot for me. But I'll talk about my competition riding and off-road riding because that's really where I actively practice very much. What I do is if there's something that I feel like I need to focus on, I very much think about only that one thing. So I'll give you a perfect example. Last year, I started noticing in my riding footage that my foot position on track was not correct. And so the next 3 or 4 days I went out on track, all I did was think about my foot position. All I did was focus on my feet, and try to make sure that they were perfect and accurate and doing exactly what I wanted to do. If you don't actively practice in this way and consciously think about the thing you're doing, you're not really going to improve. So if you are wanting to improve as a street rider, maybe practice your vision. Vision's the first thing I always recommend to beginners. Focus on vision, look as far ahead as you can. Always try to make sure you're scanning for objects and obstacles. It's always gonna be your best bet. Always focus on that throttle. Just whatever skill it is that you want to really hone in on, just really think about that on your next ride and try to do it perfectly every time you go through your favorite set of corners or your favorite street, whatever it might be. So just try that active practicing. It really helps. Mike D6146 asks, will people ever stop asking if super sports are acceptable starter bikes? Mike, I don't think they ever will. I don't think they ever will, which is a real bummer. Alf13.k asks, what would be your first piece of advice for a track day noob? Silverstone is me local track. Oh, that is a very good track, and I'm quite jealous, but I do have Coda over here, so that's not too bad for me. My first tip for your very first track day is have fun. Don't ride more than like 6 or 7/10 pace. It's your first time out there. Don't go and yeet your bike into the first corner, which I've seen so many times. I see so many level 1 guys and beginner track riders go out and just absolutely yeet their bikes for no reason. Just have fun and be safe and try to learn as much as you can. Listen to your instructors. They probably know what they're talking about. And the 2 things I would focus most on is vision and throttle. That's it. If you can just start thinking about those for your first one, you're already in a way better spot than everyone else. Don't worry about your body position too much. You're probably going to look like a little meerkat on your motorcycle, and that's okay. We all look like little meerkats when we start out, so it's fine. But yeah, just have fun. Just don't yeet yourself. Just go and have a good time. Don't try to race anybody either. I see a lot of people in level 1 doing that, which is crazy. You are not there to race. I just want to put that out there. That's not a competition environment. And yeah, just have fun. Manjarkar Abhishek, sounds like an Indian name, I'm sorry if I butchered it, asks, is it possible to control knee-down cornering on sharp turn as to not scrape my knee? It is. So this is something I've been working on track actually, is to not touch my knee as much anymore because I want to focus more on bringing my chest and my elbow further down than my knee. It's actually not that difficult to touch a knee on the ground as a track day rider. You don't even have to go fast. I think it's quite funny when people post up photos of them going super fast on track with their knee down because it's quite easy to pass someone while they have their knee down. See this photo here that I did at my last racing weekend. So I would say just focus on bringing the bike further out from you. Like, I'm gonna try to demonstrate this. If you find that you don't want to touch your knee, what you have to do is actually push the bike further away from you and actually bring your body further down. That's the proper modern body position technique. So what you want to be doing is you're mid-corner and you're pushing that bike away from you. You're light on the bars here, not too light, you want a good grip on it, but you're lighter on the bars and you've got your wrist twisted over here and your throttle over here. You're pushing that bike away from you and you're getting your upper body down. The knee will naturally come back in and you'll be in a more modern position. You can see in this photo here of Paul Espargaro doing exactly what I'm talking about, where the body moves down instead of just the knee. So give that a shot next time. Spicy Kush asks, can you go over rev matching when downshifting? I can't seem to get the timing down. I made a whole video about this that will explain it much better than I can in this video, but TLDR, it's just all about the timing. You just wanna make sure you pull in the clutch first and then rev. As long as you do that, you can kind of, you know, the shifter mechanism, you can kind of actuate anytime between these two. It doesn't really matter too much. All that really matters is your clutch control of the swift clutch motion and giving it a nice blip of the throttle. So keep practicing, you'll get it. It's not difficult. Aldo Hates asks, do I also need to pull the clutch to front brake? It depends on what situation we're talking about. If you're coming to a complete stop, yes, you'll want to pull in the clutch. But what you want to be doing, and the most efficient way to be braking, is to brake while downshifting. Engine braking will help you brake about 30% better, or it's about 30% of your total braking force is what I meant to say. And as you come to a stop, you want to be downshifting and grabbing gears down, and that'll help you come to a full stop. That's definitely the way you want to do it. So you don't need to pull in the clutch when you're using your front brake. If you're not sure how to downshift just yet, you know, that could be something that you do if you're coming to a stop. Just, you know, start braking, pull in the clutch, and then just start grabbing your gears down, find neutral, and just hang out there, and then click your gear down to first and then take off again. But I don't think it's super necessary. You should be focusing on downshifting as well. NG Gwillen #1 asks a very great question that I really want to talk about this. He says, or he or she says, I want to go to the track, but I'm nervous about the old school riders and looking dumb. I will tell you this right now. The track is one of the friendliest environments you will ever be in. I have never seen anybody making fun of a beginner rider at the track. In fact, what we want to do as track rats and racing junkies and that kind of stuff is encourage more people to do it. So anytime I see someone who is maybe a little bit more green or visibly is not, you know, a super experienced rider, and I can just kind of tell, I just want to go over there and hype them up and make sure that they're successful and happy and having fun, because it's so much fun. I love going to the track with my motorcycles, and I think it's one of the best things you can do to really just kind of get out all that yeet energy and leave it at the door when you go out to the street. So I would say the old school guys at the track are awesome. They're usually the funniest, friendliest people you'll meet, and I highly recommend you go. It's not gonna be a intimidating environment at all, I would say, especially if you're doing it with a ride school or some instructors. They're usually super friendly as well. So Adriel Martinez 6 asks, can you slow down without brakes? And that's a great question. You actually can, as long as if you just let off the throttle on a motorcycle, it's gonna already start naturally slowing down. If you grab a gear down, it's already gonna start slowing down even more. It's pretty common to see for more experienced motorcyclists to be out on a nice twisty road. If you're riding at like 4 or 5/10 pace, you don't really even need to touch the brakes. You can just let off the throttle or grab a gear down and you'll slow down enough to take whatever curve it is you're taking. So yes, you can slow down without using the brakes. Emilian Vasilev 0.03 asks, how should you stop? Like third, second, first, neutral, and stop, or stop completely on first and then neutral? So I don't know if this is the best way to stop. This is how I stop and how I was taught to stop. Let's say you're rolling down your favorite street, you're in third gear, and there's a car stopped in front of you and there's a red light. This is the procedure, right? You'll grab the front brakes, shift down into second, use engine braking, still grabbing the front, down, 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 grab down into first, down, 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 and you're coasting in first, and then you stop and pull in the clutch, you stay in first, and you start dragging your rear brake a little bit, get your left foot down, and stop the motorcycle. You keep that left foot down, clutch in, first gear, boom, boom, ready to go. That way, when it turns green or you're ready to take off, you are literally ready to go, and you can just let off the clutch, undrag the rear brake, get your foot back on, and you're back on the bike and you're rolling. I only put it in neutral when I'm out in traffic. If I'm sitting at a super long red light and I'm just getting a little lazy, I normally stick in first gear and just hold in the clutch, but that's usually the way you want to do it. Mick Whitty asks, what is the hardest thing to learn to do as a new rider? And I think it's throttle control, honestly. The throttle is everything on a motorcycle. It is your key to understanding it. It is literally the most important part of what your bike is doing. And it's so different because I think in a car, we all think of it as like the go fast pedal, but really on a bike, it's the most intimate connection. It's extremely important. And I think jerky throttle movements is something that beginners struggle with a lot. And I think that's the thing they need to learn the most, honestly. Blacked Out Sky asks, how do you get over the fear of looking stupid / like a noob for your first few weeks of street riding? Honestly, people who are more experienced motorcyclists, if we do notice a more green or new rider, I think it's awesome. I've seen, for example, like you can kind of just point it out, like if some dude is, sorry, there was someone behind me, that was crazy. If some dude is on like a Ninja 400 and he's got like really nice, clean looking gear and a helmet and a clear visor and some sunglasses or something, I can just tell that's a new rider, and I'm usually so excited when I see it because I'm like, yes, there's one more of us on the road. So experienced motorcyclists are gonna be super stoked to see you. And people who don't ride, you're like, well, you don't even ride. So I'm out here on my bike and you're not, so I might look like a noob, but I'm doing my thing. So whatever, you know? So I think it's kind of a win-win. Tim K. Walther asks an interesting question here. He says, how to self-evaluate to know when you're ready for a second bike and what second bike is best for you? And that's a big question, okay? Honestly, that's a really big question. So I think fundamentally, deep down, because we live in America and we don't have a tiered licensing system, only you can know when you're ready. And it's a hard thing to hear because you'd love to just have me throw down a number for you and you can just know when you're ready to go, but it just doesn't really work that way. I've seen some beginner riders be ready to step up after 9 months. I've seen some folks need to maybe sit at their level that they're at now for maybe 2 years and then they're gonna move up to something else. There's also financial considerations to think about for your upgrade. There's insurance costs and all that kind of stuff. So I think the standard path that I see beginners follow is they buy something like a Do 390 or a Ninja 400 And then maybe a year later, they'll move into the 600 or the 650 class. And then maybe a year after that, they try out a leader bike or some big fancy bike like that. And then a year after that, if they haven't crashed anything else, they might realize that the leader bike isn't super fun, and then they go back to something smaller. And then the year after that, they're usually buying a super specialized machine, given what they like to do. That's the most common progression I've seen over time. And you know, it's so difficult for us to say when you are ready. I think it's something that you're gonna have to look in the mirror and say, is it time for me yet? Do I feel confident? Do I feel like this is something that I can do? And then from there, really decide what path you wanna go down. I would say give yourself at least a year on your beginner bike, whatever bike you started out with. Ride it for a year, have fun, enjoy the journey. You know, don't try to leapfrog ahead. Don't try to keep jumping ahead of the goalposts. It's so fun being a beginner, honestly, because everything is so new and there's so much to learn. There's so much knowledge. Sometimes because I work with motorcycles and this is my livelihood and my business, I do feel a little jaded and crusty about it sometimes, and like I'm aging in dog years when it comes to motorcycles, but I still get super jazzed about them all the time, and I think they're so fun and interesting, and there's literally always something new to learn. And you as a beginner, it's like there's this whole big world out there. So just enjoy it, enjoy the journey of being a beginner and have fun, you know? Bloop97 asks, body position and proper cornering, please, Papa Yam. That is a big question. I don't think I can answer it correctly in a quick little 30-second answer, but you know, for the street, keep half a cheek off your seat at the most. Don't overdo the body position thing on the street because it's a little silly. Think way more about your line and your throttle than your body position. Honestly, you can be crossed up as hell and still be super confident and fast on your machine. I've seen it plenty of times. So don't worry too much about that. Always, if you're on the street, stay away from the middle of the line there because you never know if someone's gonna come around the corner a little bit quicker than you. Always leave yourself some space. Take nice late apex lines on the street so you can see further out than you need to go. And just ride at 5/10 at the very most. You don't need to go super fast on the street. That's my breakdown for this video, but I think I have a video that I made on the desert sled where I talked about street riding and cornering and that kind of stuff. At least my perspective on it. Hey Ron Yanor asks, my dad won't buy me a Busa, what should I do? Get a new dad. You kidding me? Grego Villar asks, been riding since January, best way/tips to start going to the track. Cheers from Argentina. That is awesome. I love hearing that new riders want to go to the track. Always a favorite thing of mine to hear. I think the first track day you do, as long as your bike is roadworthy and in good condition and has good tires, take the bike you got. It's going to be just fine for you to go and learn on. If you want to do it on the cheap, most track day organizations will offer a suit rental, so you don't need to go and buy your own suit and all that. So you can just show up with your bike, rent the suit, jump into the suit. As long as you've got a full face helmet, gloves, and good boots, they should be good to go and you'll have fun and go learn. So that's usually the #1 way to get in there and get started. Manos_per asks, is it difficult having a passenger with you? Mostly worried about taking a turn or about their actions. So, I mean, there's a lot of considerations when you have a passenger on you. I personally don't ride with the passenger very often. I've maybe done it about 10 or 12 times in my whole riding career. I don't really have a pillion with me that often, but I know many other riders do, and they have way more experience riding 2-up than I do. Fort9 recently did a great video about riding with a passenger, and basically what you want to do is just communicate with them if they're not a motorcycle rider about just, hey, no sudden movements, stay with me on the bike and we're all going to have a good time. It's not that difficult. Low speed stuff can be tricky, and there's no shame in, you know, if you got to back out of a spot or you got to move your motorcycle around, you're just like, hey, I'm gonna put both my feet down, can you dismount, and then I'm gonna position this bike in the correct way, and then you can jump back on and then we'll get going. Because it's really hard to do super low speed stuff with the passenger on the back. I know that some people do it, but I'm not super great at it. So if you want, that's usually the best way to do it as well. Redazriel asks, not a beginner rider, but I want to break into track riding in Texas. Don't know where to start. Well, I'm so glad you asked because I am a track rider in Texas and a racer in Texas. Go to a website called ridesmart.org or ridesmart.com. RideSmart is a great organization here for your very first track day. You can sign up for a day at any one of our local tracks here. They have days at Crescent, at Houston, at Coda even, if you have the funds for it. It's about $400 for that day, which is a little pricey for a lot of people. It's a little pricey for me, honestly. I don't like paying that much for a track day. And it's why I'm a member at a couple private tracks. Sport bike rider coaching as well. up at Eagles Canyon Raceway, where I am a member, and if you go and do it around there, I might even be there for a member day. I'm usually up there quite often. So yeah, go and check out those resources and then get linked up with them and sign up for your first day. TR Meta 7 asks, I'm only 5'5" tall and struggle flat-footing most sport bikes, obviously. And that's tough. Yeah, a lot of sport bikes are designed for people my size, about 5'11", 6 foot, that sort of thing. So it's tough being a little bit shorter, but you can always kind of lean your body over and just get that 1 foot down. The 1 foot down technique will help you ride many more bikes than you ever thought possible. It's a little difficult to learn at first, but as long as you learn how to come to a complete stop with just your left foot and position your body a little bit further down so you can reach it, it's super easy. The bike will be leaned over a little bit, but it's totally fine. Vinny Madrox asks, hey Fast Boy, how much do you practice slow speed maneuvers in parking lots? Honestly, never. It's not really relevant to my riding or what I'm doing with motorcycles. It's not gonna help me become a faster racer or a better track day rider to go very, very slowly in slow speeds in parking lots. The better option for me would be to go to a go-kart track with a mini bike. That would help quite a bit because you actually get to practice taking lines and actually braking at the limit and that kind of thing and experiencing loss of traction, which is what we need to practice when we are practicing for racing and track days. I'm not really into the whole Motokana thing or doing super slow speed tricks with my motorcycle. It doesn't really help my style of riding. The only time I do stuff like that is when I'm on this bike, the orange bike in the middle, and I will go out and practice, pressing on the compression, getting, first gear wheelies and that kind of stuff, and understanding how to do very slow speed things with the dirt bike, but that's very different than the parking lot maneuvers that you're mentioning. So I actually don't do it that often. Mike Jeskin asks, how do I get over the feeling of my tires slipping? It happens every time, yet I still have some chicken strips. So first of all, don't worry about chicken strips. They literally do not matter whatsoever if you're a street rider. Literally does not matter. I'm pretty sure all of my street motorcycles have chicken strips, but as you can see over my race bike, it is fully worn down to the edge of the tire. Chicken strips don't matter on the street. The other thing I want to say is it just happens over time. You'll slowly start feeling lean angles over time, but really super extreme lean angles only happen on track in enclosed environments. You're not going to see, unless someone is riding very aggressively and unsafely, you're not going to see someone super leaned in over on the corner on the street. It's just not necessary to take corners at those kinds of lean angles. So I would say just develop your sense of confidence on the bike first. Don't worry too much about how much lean or how much angle you're getting when you're riding. Radu Tomescu asks, direction change and braking in general, tricks and tips. So I love changing directions on my motorcycle. One of my favorite things on track is when you go from a hard right to a hard left. You get to literally flick the bike over from one lane onto the next. It's amazing. And really it happens with setup, right? So what you want to do is if you're fully leaned over on this side, taking a right-hand corner, what you'll want to do to get over to the left is slowly position your body over to get over to the other side. So your butt's going to be over on this side. You'll want to anchor your butt over on the other side and then already be set up with your lower body to then just flick over to the other side. It takes a little bit of practice, but it'll happen very intuitively if you go to a little parking lot and practice or something. And then you can start trying it on higher speed sections. But it is one of the most fun you can have on a motorcycle to just kind of flick it over from side to side really fast. Alf159 asks how to slide the bike. So I would say the first thing you can start experimenting with slides is rear brake slides. It's the easiest thing to do. Go out and find yourself a little gravel pit or something like that. If your motorcycle does have ABS, you're going to want to disable it. If your bike doesn't have ABS, you're already set to go. And what you're going to want to do is just ride in first gear at about 15 miles per hour, 10 miles per hour, and just step on the rear brake until you feel the rear lose traction, and do not let go of the rear brake until you are stopped. Keep stepping on the rear brake. You'll feel the bike slide out. You can move your butt around a little bit and you'll feel it kind of wiggle, and just start from there. So you can start experiencing low grip situations and slides on a motorcycle. It's a lot easier to do that at first in gravel and dirt conditions than it is on the street. It can be very violent on the street when you lose traction if you're not ready for it. It's quite fun on track because, if you're on slicks, it slides out really predictably and it's a whole different thing. But on the street, because most street tires have a very hard compound, they tend to snap really hard back into traction when they lose traction, so they can be kind of dangerous. So I would say off-road is going to be your best bet to learn how to slide a bike. Rover43 asks, how can I get over wanting to ride dank nooners all the time? I don't know, I'm still not over it. I pop wheelies all the time on all my bikes. They're not great wheelies, but I love doing it. It's super fun. I can't get over it. Demian_soak asks, I almost exclusively use the front brake. Is this bad? I wouldn't say so. For track riding, for me, I never touch the rear brake, but some other guys like to use both brakes. I just don't use my rear brake at all on track. And it's really just a stylistic preference. For the street, rear brake is great for slow speed stuff. So if you're going around a parking lot or something, dragging that rear brake is just gonna give your bike a little bit more stability. It's really gonna liven things up for you and make it so that you can really move the bike around in slow speed conditions. I would definitely say start learning how to use your rear brake because for off-road riding especially, the rear brake is your best friend. Whenever you're going down a very steep hill or something, you wanna slightly drag your rear brake, maybe the front a little bit, control your speed. Rear brake is a big friend in off-road riding. And yeah, it's a wonderful tool, so you should learn how to use it, but at first it's not the worst thing in the world if you're not using your rear brake just yet. But you will notice as you come to a complete stop, if you blend your front and rear brake, you can get the two to work in tandem a little bit better, and you don't have that crazy front end fork dive if you're having that right now. Brandon Gilmer asks, how old were you when you attended your first track day? I think I was 22 or 23. Let me think. Yes, I was 23 because it was in 2016. So I was 23 years old when I attended my first track day, and I had been riding for about a year and a half at that point. So yeah. Flimsy Aiden asks, is it safe enough to lean aggressively on the streets? I would really recommend you don't add super aggressive lean angles on the street, mostly because you're not in a closed environment. So if anything does go wrong, you have no runoff room, there's cars coming the other way, there's bad road conditions. There's really no need for super aggressive lean angles on the street, and anyone that's doing that is probably not riding super safely. So that's just my 2 cents on it. And last but not least, one of our Discord users, Bankshift Bill, asks, how do I manage a rear sliding end at braking hard into turn 1 at Coda? Damn, that's a very specific question. I would say, you know, if you are braking on the front super hard and you're feeling that rear just kind of stepping out a little bit, let it happen, let it kind of pick it up and see what it wants to do. It depends on the types of tires you're on as well. Bill, I don't know if, I can't remember if your 848 is on slicks or if it's on Q4s or a Hypersport tire, but for slicks, it's gonna manage that slide a little bit better. But the best thing you can do is don't let it get all out of sorts. You know, don't panic, don't do anything, just kind of let it happen a little bit. You'd be surprised at how much the bike will let you slide before it really just bucks you off and does crazy stuff. So just slowly practice it bit by bit and increase the yeet energy until you two are backing it into turn 1. There goes my phone. Backing it into turn 1 at Coda and looking like a champion. And with that, that's gonna wrap up our beginner rider questions. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey, thanks for watching the video. Why don't you click this one right over here and you can keep watching some more of your sweet Papa Yam. Maybe this one will have fun memes in it. Maybe it'll be interesting. Maybe I crash a motorcycle. Who can say? Maybe you should click and find out.